Thank you so much. Thank you. So are we good? Come on, are we good? All right. So Dee Dee is attributed to discussing this great coherence between man the physical and man the spiritual. And of course, as we start to recognize the uniqueness of chiropractic, the uniqueness of what we have, it's because we own or should own a philosophy that distinguishes us so far outside of how the rest of this confused world works that we should be so clear as to who we are and what we stand for. And as we peel back and begin to understand the philosophy that we are so proud of, we come to recognize that there are terms that endear us to the bigness and the greatness that we can't even comprehend. Omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence. And as a result of that, we talk about the universality. And if we were to take a look at the universal forces that are allowing us to exist in this environment, and we're not talking simply in our solar system here, we're talking about, as Arno was talking briefly before, the universal intelligence is. We expect that as we start to understand what those universal forces are that allow this to happen, that there have been 4 universal forces that guide us as we look at the physics of what keeps the planets in order. Gravity, electromagnetism, and strong and weak nuclear forces. Now, if we were to draw a chart that was associated with those different forces, we'd see about 17 different subsets, especially in the nuclear forces. There's quarks, there's bosons. And yet, here we have a system that can barely help us understand less than 5% of what we understand is universal matter. In our best attempt to try and understand universal forces, we can barely comprehend ourselves. So much so that just in April of this year, there is conjecture through a Hungarian research project that they have discovered a 5th universal force. It's a particulate boson force attached to the reality that there is something going on in the nuclear responses between neutrons and electrons that may be the key to help us understand the other 95%. My point is that those who live with the belief that mechanism has all the answers are wrong. Those of us who adopt a universal intelligence is in all things and gives to it all of its properties when, all of the time, have the notion of vitalism, which is our philosophy, correct. We don't know the answers by looking simply at the physical world. We have to trust in faith that as we go forward, as we move forward into what we do and what we know, there will always be the next understanding. And that is why we are so special, because we do not get caught up in this principle of dogma, in this notion that we have all the answers. If we had all the answers as chiropractors, we would not have to struggle by trying to defend ourselves against mechanists. The reality is that our conversations about vitalism are real. So let's peel back and look at some of the evolutions, or at least my perception of the evolutions, of how we came to this idea. And I'm not going to do what Simon does so much better than anybody on the planet, which is to look at the history, but I'm going to just sit down and give my perceptions of different categorical trends that have occurred within our profession. And the first trend that we see is that we begin with a good idea, a philosophy that was antagonistic to what was out there already, or at least an evolution of something that was referred to as neo-vitalism. Neo-vitalism is that starting point under where we start to look and say, how does the matter, the meat on the bone, start to react and change when there is something called that we named as subluxation, of interference to the natural flow of the communication. And so we take this down a certain path and we win many battles, we lose many battles. And one of the battles that we start to lose terribly is that we start to fall back as we enter into what we call the spinal age of chiropractic. And the spinal age of chiropractic was that age of where we forgot the mysteries that were supposed to be guiding us and we became mechanists. Not me, but I'm saying our profession became mired in the mechanism, and it was mostly driven because insurance companies wanted us to get paid for outcomes of mechanistic nature. So we enter into the sort of the nasty, confused model of where we try to pathologize the subluxation. We try to defend its presence and its uniqueness by trying to say, there, that's what it is. It looks like that in structure. And in doing so, we forget so often that it is not the structure, it is the essence of what structure is telling us and why there is this interference to the flow of vital, life-giving, life experience producing innate intelligence. I'm happy to tell you that I get a chance to travel a long way around this planet. I get to hang out with some of the coolest people in the profession. I get to hang out with many people who don't understand what I'm talking about in terms of them being chiropractors, and yet there is a common thread. And I will tell you that my perception is that we've left this sort of very confused model of the spinal age, or we're leaving it, and we're entering into what I refer to as the Neuro Age of chiropractic. And the Neuro Age of chiropractic, I'm going to present a new term today, is the neurovitalistic age of chiropractic, of where we have this grand opportunity in front of us, not to struggle with trying to talk about bone out, pinches nerve, causes problem, where we can now start to say to the world, there is this complex neural network that allows us to exactly feel what we need to feel, exactly act as how we need to act, and we have a mechanism under which we can interact with that without drugs, with something that is so powerful that it can be delivered in a corner office in any place in the world. And all it takes is a skilled chiropractor to understand how to determine and assess where that interference is occurring. And if you start to enter into the Neuro Age, it's not like you have to hit him with the shovel. Works anyways. But if you need to, you should probably begin to understand that this neural network that is allowing this human experience to occur also can be looked at in some very, very unique ways so that you become very highly specific, which is the art.